Hey lovelies, it's Imogen, and today I'm going to look at the Bich Ballpoint Multipen and some of the meanings behind Bich's names for their pen products and what they really mean. After this, if you're interested in the art I made using these Bich Ballpoint Multipens or want a brief history and my unsolicited opinions about ballpoint pens, definitely stay watching or check the time hops on the YouTube video and description. So without further ado, let's get on. The ballpoint was created in 1887, patented in 1888 by American lawyer and part-time inventor John J. Loud. Later, Biro, and then Reynolds. However, it wasn't until 1950 that French company Society Bic and later Bic Crystal, now known as just Bic, established in 1945, released their first ballpoint pen in 1950, which was closer to the disposable ballpoint pens of today. It was another 20 years before they released their Multipen in 1970, a design that encouraged many other companies to design their version of the Multipen. The original Multipen consisted of the classic black, dark blue, red, and green inks. These colours were based on the most common used ink colours in the industry practice at the time. Black was seen as a formal colour used for documents, legal papers, official and standard practices. It was seen as the most legible ink to read, and so became the standard. The dark blue ink was seen less formal, often used by editors and students. However, in some legal cases, it would be used for signatures to verify original documents versus a copied document which would show up in black. Red ink was typically used for correcting documents such as in teaching, but it was also quite striking and easily stood out as important on a document, so used for annotating, drawing the viewer's attention, especially to key points, and easily denoted negative numbers in financing. Green ink was typically used for bookkeeping, accounting, positive finances, etc. Occasionally, teachers would prefer to use green ink over red when marking, as it still stood out from black blue ink, but it was less intimidating or aggressive. This I hope gave some examples of the original uses for these four colours. There is many more uses and meanings for the original four ink colours, of course, and today the pens come in more than just the standard four colours, some even feature a pencil. Like most ballpoint pens, Bic uses an oil-based ink, which means it sits on the surface of the paper and doesn't sink into the paper, preventing ghosting and bleeding. It's also typically fast drying, so generally prevents smudging. Let's actually have a look at the Bic collection I purchased. I grabbed this pack of 6 multi-pens, or technically 24 individual pens, for £8.69 on Amazon UK. Approximately £1.45 per multi-pen and approximately 36p per ink. Yes, possibly cheaper in shops sold individually or in other collections, but I'm happy with what I paid for this set, which features 6 of the pen variants, as shown on the packaging, and also you can see through the plastic window. Down here in the bottom left corner, it shows how many of what inks are included in the collection and some of the same ink in different pens. Generally, the Bic multi-pens are 1mm tips, and we apparently have 4 standard blue, 4 standard black, 4 standard red, 3 standard green, 1 light blue or turquoise as I believe they call it, 1 lime green, 2 pink, 2 purple, 1 yellow, 1 orange, and then in a 1.6mm we have a yellow highlighter tip made for underlining keywords, but more about that in a bit. I've decided to try and talk about these pens in the order they were released rather than how they appear in or on the packaging, but it was hard for me to find official launch date information, but hopefully the following information will at least be interesting. So let's dive in. First, we have the updated classic. The original Bic Multipen was released in 1970 and, as said, contained the same 4 basic ink colours that it does today. This blue-bodied pen, also known as the original Bic Multipen, consists of 1mm nibs which create a 0.32mm line. Sometime later, the redesign featuring less plastic and a lanyard attachment loop on the top was released. I believe in 2011, Bic also brought out the classic 4-color multipen, but this time with an orangey-red body. This was known as the original fine multipen, the difference being that they are 0.8mm nibs, creating a 0.3mm line. I believe in 2012, Bic also brought out the original in a mini version. This pen is the exact same as the original, however shorter in length. I believe because of this, the ink inside is also shorter and less ink, but the price seems to be around the same price point for both pens. Also around the same time, Bic also released the multi-grip in dark blue body with a rubber grip, being exactly the same as the original 4 inks, but the body has a grip feature to aid longer writing periods, ideal for students or users who may have gripping difficulties like arthritis, for example. Pens that have a number +1 typically mean it's inks plus a pencil. For example, 3 + 1, 3 inks and a pencil, 4 + 1, 4 inks and a pencil. Some include erasers. Some other brands of multi-pens you can get a whole ink replacement of an eraser. I'm looking at you, Pilot High-Tech Coletto, which just doesn't seem to be available here in the UK. Then came the Big Fun. Big Fun features 4 new ink colours, specifically pink, turquoise, which is a light blue, lime green, and purple. Again in the standard 1mm. The bodies for these fun pens came in white and a pastel blue, like I have here, and white pastel pink. The Multi-Fun then came in a grip version, which was white with a deep purple body and a rubber grip. Then later came the original Fun, but in white lime green, in the mini form. I believe in 2016 Bic released the Fluo. I believe this means fluorescent. The pen with its see-through green body features the original 1mm black, blue, and red. The green is then replaced with a 1.6 fluorescent highlighter pen in yellow. The 1.6mm nib is said to create a much thicker line, approximately 0.4mm. I believe in 2017 Bic released the Bic Multi-Sun, a multi-pen that came in white with a bright yellow body, featuring 4 ink colours, pink and purple, and then 2 new colours, an orange and a much to ballpoint artist delight, a yellow. Bic states that between June 2023 and June 2024, yes, a date that's not yet come to pass, they released their classic 4-colour multi-pen in the classic black, blue, red and green ink, but in a shiny metallic coloured body. This is known as their Shiny collection. I have the shiny white silver, which came in this multi-pack I got, but they, Bic, also released shiny versions of white with metallic purple, a white gold, a white metallic blue, white rose gold, white metallic pink, white metallic red, and white metallic gradient, which is like a rainbow. All of them had the same 4 classic ink colours. Bic claims this was part of the sustainable launch, claiming that Bic Multipen now contains 13% less plastic in the upper white body part. Around the same time, they also released the Decors. This included, but not limited to, wood, glitters, botanicals, tie-dye, velvet flock embossed, cute food, messages, and space. Next came the Pros collection, which features again the original pen 4 ink colours, but with an all black body except for an orange belt. The countertop pen version of this was also released, which included a ball chain and stand. And then again, they released a grip version, which was the Grip Pro, which featured an all black and grey body with a rubber style grip. So I'm hoping that this deep delve gives you some ideas of what's out there, and this is just Bic's collection. Of course, there's many other known brands and unknown brands for that matter, carrying multiple versions such as 3 inks in 1 pen, 4, 5, even 10 in 1. Some include pencils and erasers. Some you can customize your own ink choices. Some you can choose between the nib sizes, typically 0.5, 0.7 and 1mm. Some even feature colored pencils and crayons. There's a lot of choice when it comes to multi-pen world. There's no right or wrong, it's your preference. And some different brands also have some unique designs when it comes to pen clips, decorative toppers, gravity feed, clicker feed, twist features, weight, design, size, materials, i.e. plastic or metal bodies, and much more. So, some pros and cons. An obvious pro of multipen is carrying more pens without carrying more pens, storing more pens without storing more pens, and the ease of switching colour. One of the main cons is the size of the barrel. Generally speaking, the more inks included inside one pen's housing, the housing would need to be bigger to accommodate them. This can make it rather uncomfortable to hold and or write or even draw for prolonged periods of time, even with the grip features. But here's why I'm excited for these specific pens I bought. I know for a fact I'd like to use the ballpoint pens in my new daily journal. I've done my due diligence in researching notebooks especially sized paper GSM colour and feel grid size to be dot or squared, aka graphed, and I've seen a lot of Moleskine users recommend using ballpoints. Additionally, I'd like to go back to doing some inky doodles and sketches and ballpoint pen art, and rather than carrying a dozen or so individual coloured ballpoint pens with me, I figured carrying 3 of these pens would give me enough colours, 10, to do what I'd like to do. Specifically, I'd like to carry the Shiny, the Fun, and the Sun multi-pens. I also figured the Mini would go well with my pocket journal and my pocket journal list pads, especially when travelling. Here I thought I'd do a quick swatch of the colours on my 120 GSM Scribbles That Matter and my new See My Latest Video 70 GSM Moleskine. So now we've looked at Bic multi-pens, I hope that's insightful and you'll be leaving me a thumbs up. From here on, I thought I'd do some artsy ballpoint doodle art for the first time in absolute years, while talking a little more in depth about the history of the ballpoint pen. And if this isn't your cup of tea, I truly recommend you stay and listen. A ballpoint pen is also known as a Biro, ball pen, dot pen. It's a pen that dispenses ink via a metal ball in a socket at the bottom point of the pen, thus ballpoint. The metal involved in the ballpoint today is typically steel, brass, or tungsten carbide, while the body of the pen, also known as the housing or case, can be made of different materials, including but not limited to plastics, rubbers, metals, and even wood. Also, they come in a variety of colours, designs, and finishes. However, the history of the ballpoint pen is truly a journey I wasn't expecting to take when I set out to make this video, but one I feel so inspired by and hope that pen enthusiasts and stationery lovers will also love. I will include my reference materials in the description below, although I strive to put this into my own words. So let's begin. Ballpoint pen was invented in 1887 by American John J. Loud. He, a lawyer, an occasional inventor, and a keen leather worker, received the first patent for the ballpoint pen in 1888. Loud wanted an ink pen that was more reliable than dip pens or fountain pens, and more specifically, Loud especially wanted a tool which would be able to write on rougher alternative materials, such as leather and wood, for marking measurements, etc., while he worked, and not just a pen for the 19th century paper. A personal thought, as someone coming from a planner and journaling community, it seems insane that almost the number one test today is how good it holds up with fountain pen, when back in the day they were looking for a fountain pen alternative that was better, a more versatile option, a pen that does more, an option that some people today scoff at and reach for a fountain pen or even a gel pen over a ballpoint. Anyway, despite the fountain pen enthusiast community, ballpoint was originally seen as a more advanced, superior technology, better than the fountain pen. Oh, how times have changed. As said, Loud specifically set out as he wanted a tool that could mark on leather. Loud's pen design had a small rotating steel ball held in place by a socket, much like today's design. And while Loud did achieve his goals in creating the pen that did in fact mark on the rough surfaces, such as leather and wood, it proved to be too coarse of a tool for letter writing on paper. And so sadly, with no commercial marketing valuability, the ballpoint pen's potential went unexploited and the patent eventually lapsed. After that, many patents were filed worldwide, especially during early development, yet rejected due to lack of support for commercial viability and failure to meet performance requirements during product testing. These pens missed the mark as they didn't deliver ink evenly and produced repetitive problems with both ink overflow and/or clogging. The ball and sockets were too tight or too loose, causing ball migration and/or ink issues. The ink would dry before it hit the paper. The ink was too thick or even too thin. The pen would leak. Ink would take too long to dry and even smear, or the ink would coagulate. Today, many manufacturers boast of economical, tried and tested, reliable ballpoint pens which came from years of experiments, modern chemistry, and precise manufacturing capabilities developed by the 20th century. Developments that led to invention of ink reservoirs pressurized by piston springs capillary actions, and gravity pens would all serve as solutions to the ink delivery and flow problems they had back in the 19th century. A version of the modern ballpoint pen would later be patented in 1938 by Hungarian-born Laszlo Biro, 22 years after Laud's death. Much like Laud, Biro had a purpose to create his version of the ballpoint pen. While Laud created his as a tool to aid in his leatherwork and crafting, Biro's ballpoint pen was created out of frustration. He, a newspaper editor who needed a pen with ink that dried quickly and didn't smudge or leave him with inky hands. Laszlo had an idea that he took to his brother, Jörg. Jörg was a dentist and a well-practiced chemist. Together, they discovered adding fountain pen ink to a ballpoint pen simply wasn't going to work, because fountain pen ink simply takes too long to dry, and they needed something that was much more like printer press ink. Yes, something others had tried before, but their success lay in refining the ink that was thick enough, thin enough, fast drying enough, and the brothers made a creation of the ballpoint pen that was a combination of thick, sticky ink and a tiny ball bearing in a socket, much like Laud's ball and socket design. However, Biro's ball and socket mechanism was designed in a way that allows the ball to roll around much more easily on paper while sealing in the ink from the air so it didn't dry out, and a formula of viscous ink that was key to their success in the ballpoint pen. However, despite the success of the pen and the patent, originally World War II had other plans for the Biro brothers. As Jews during World War II, the brothers decided to flee Europe in 1941, emigrating to Argentina. It was there that Laszlo Biro continued his ballpoint pen invention, helped by fellow escapee Jean-Georges Main. The first Biro Me, as it was known in Argentina, was released in 1943. It's also where our term Biro comes from for the ballpoint pens of today, despite they're not actually of his design. Anyway, although the war continued in Europe and the Pacific, the RAF, Royal Air Force, heard of the pen and were intrigued by it. They put in an order for 30,000 pens which were able to be used by aircrew at high altitude, unlike fountain pens which tend to leak because of the pressure changes. And thus the ballpoint pen changed life as we know it today, potentially helping win World War II. Furthering the success of Biro Me in 1945, two US companies, the Eversharp Co., aka part of Parker Pen today, and the Eberhard Faber Co., aka part of Faber-Castell today, teamed up together to buy the license and the pen for the US market. It was said that they were to buy and license the pen at cost of $500,000 US, which is the approximate equivalent to 7.2 million United States dollars or 5.6 million Great British pounds in 2020's currency value. However, they failed in their endeavor, which ultimately was the end of Biro Me due to American businessman Milton Reynolds. Reynolds was visiting Buenos Aires and he was impressed with the new pen, Biro Me, and so he himself purchased several of them. Although, upon his return to America, he set up the Reynolds International Pen Company, still going today, to market a new design, his design. Reynolds' design had just enough changes to sidestep Laszlo Biro's patent and was first to go on sale in October 1945. Reynolds' pen became an overnight success, the next must-have accessory, wildly reported in papers, magazines, and various other publishings. Time magazine said thousands of people all but trampled one another last week to spend $12.50 each for a new fountain pen. At the time, $12.50 was the equivalent to approximately $172 or £125 per pen in 2020's value. Time magazine went on to say that the new pen only needed refilling once every 2 years. Gimbels had ordered 50,000 of the new pens and had sold 30,000 of them by the end of the first week. According to Time magazine, Gimbels made more than 5.6 million in sales, approximately 81 million United States dollars or 62 million Great British pounds in 2020's currency values. From the new pen in the first 6 months, Reynolds made a big deal out of the fact that his pen only needed to be refilled once every 2 years. I feel it's important to note that early day ballpoint pens were modelled on the look of fountain pens and the idea that they'd also be refillable. Originally, the ballpoint pen was more expensive than the fountain pen. Oh, how times have changed. And both were considered rather an expensive luxury item for the time, whereas if you wanted a cheaper writing tool, you'd be buying a pencil. Unlike today, where ballpoints are incredibly cheap, costing as little as pennies per pen, especially when purchased in multi-packs, for example. Anyway, Reynolds boasted of a pen that only needed filling every 2 years, meant that this pen was more long-term affordable, which put problems to many major pen companies at that time, including Eversharp, the fountain pen make Parker, who pivoted briefly from fountain pens to ballpoint pens due to saturated market requirements. It was soon clear that people were buying refills and not more pens. 5 years after the release of Reynolds' pen in 1950, an Italian-born French industrialist, Michael Bich, who also at the time ran a ballpoint pen marketing company, discovered a formula for disposable ballpoint pens, and because of this, Bich found a way to combine functionality with affordability, making the premium products such as Reynolds ballpoint pens obsolete, and instead replaced with Bich's more affordable disposable product. So Bich acquired a factory near Paris and created the company Society Bich, known today as Bich. Society Bich and Michael Bich underwent a few brand changes under the advice of advertising executive, which ultimately led him to shorten his name to create the instantly recognizable three-letter trademark Bich. The company logo, the Big Boy, its smooth, featureless, round face being a reference to the metal ball of the ballpoint pen, and thus Bic ballpoint pen came to be. Quickly, the Bic sold in the UK for around 1 shilling, approximately £1.50 Great British pounds, or $1.96 United States dollars in 2020's price. Compared to Reynolds' pen, which was $12.50, equivalent of $172 or £125 per pen. And compared to the first ever ballpoint pen sold in the UK, which was 55 shillings, approximately £82 or $107 in 2020's prices. Bic was able to combine functionality with affordability, and it's no surprise that Bic is still one of the leading manufacturers of ballpoint pens today. Since that initial idea back in 1887, an unimaginable amount of ballpoint pens have been manufactured and sold. In fact, present day it's said that millions are manufactured and sold daily by many brands, some well known, such as Bic, and others not so well known. And these pens are produced in multiple nib sizes, which release different line thicknesses, as well as a variety of coloured inks and pen bodies, shapes and formats, from the classic crystal with a cap to various ways of retractables. Ballpoint pens have many uses in the industry as well as domestic. It seems almost unimaginable to think of anyone who's never used one. I myself have for writing, including in school and at work and at home, to journal and to plan, as well as even in my art and design processes, drawing and doodling. Today's ballpoint works just as it always did, by a little ball bearing at the bottom of a tube, where there's a socket that looks a bit like a cone, if you will. The tube holds the ink, the ball stops the ink from flowing out the bottom of the tube and the cone until the ball is rolled in its socket and dispenses the ink. The cone and the socket help hold the ball so that it doesn't slip up inside the tube nor fall out of the pen. As said, the ball collects the ink which rolls onto the surface, i.e. paper. This isn't to say that the ink won't build up on or around the ball and socket opening, creating a thick dot of ink. So it's good practice to wipe off the ball pen prior to use as well as during use, especially if you're using a ballpoint for drawing. Today, typically ballpoint ink is oil-based and not water-based like fountain pens, gel pens, and markers, or alcohol-based like other markers. But a main feature of this is that the ink sits on the paper instead of bleeding in, which also means the ballpoint is unlikely to ghost and shouldn't bleed through paper at all. Obviously, some superfine onion skin papers take ink differently. One thing I do always notice is that due to my heavy hand, often the pen causes an indent into the paper or the below papers. Sometimes a pencil board and or scrap paper may be required to aid with this, especially if you're using ballpoint pen to do art, but the same can be said of any pen or pencil with enough pressure. So that concludes our history of how something today we absolutely don't think twice about potentially helped win World War II, changed lives overnight, became a multi-billion industry invading the homes of millions of people and inspiring and aiding people worldwide daily. Plus all the art, the design, the writing, planning, journaling, which we take the ballpoint pen for granted. So, if you like this video, learnt anything, or simply made it all the way through, then I'd love it if you give it a like. It truly helps my channel with the algorithm. If stationery and or planning or journaling is your thing, definitely subscribe if you haven't already, and be sure to hit the bell for notifications of my future videos. I'm very excited for the journey I'm on here. Be sure to also check out my planner Instagram at Witch's Plans. I'll put the link in the description, as well as to my printables, including freebies Instagram at A Witch's Imagination, and my coffee shop at coffee.com/A Witch's Imagination. which also has freebies as well as purchasable downloads for use with digital journals and planners or printing out and using traditionally. I also have a tip donation feature on my Ko-fi, which enables me to continue to plan, journal, stationery shop, and do the printables, YouTube, Instagram, and well, all of it massively helps my mental health. I'll try to bring more behind the scenes to my blog on my Ko-fi too, and following me on Ko-fi is free, as it is on my multiple Instagram accounts. Feel free to check out my other socials, including my art Instagram at Imogen Victoria Art. And finally, feel free to comment what is your favourite ballpoint brand or even model, and that'll do it. So be mindful of others, take care of yourself, and until next time, bye! Oh, P.S. The YouTube description holds resource reference, picture, source credits, and more information, as well as links and time hops. Any imagery that isn't my own, I'll credit there as well, and any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. Thanks for watching. Bye!